Oh, dude, what is this article? What is this article, boys? This is nice. We talked to... Dude, there's an article about games with raids. How to make raids. And ArenaNet actually talk about it. Dude, nice! This is so sick. Hang on, I've got to read this. I have got to read this, dude. Oh, man. Let's go, dude. Let's go. Okay. Let's read about how to make a raid. Are you guys ready? Let's read from the top. Okay. How to make a raid. Lessons from WoW, Guild Wars 2, and Final Fantasy devs. Since their inception in the late 90s, MMORPGs have proven one of the most durable permutations of social gaming. And their influence can be felt across the grand spectrum of genres. From grinding levels solo because no one you know is online, to grouping up with a gaggle of randoms to talk about tackle a stiffer challenge. MMOs have always thrived on a shared sense of community to get you through the doldrums of life. Or at least the drudgery of running the same quest again and again to get to the next gate. Even in the days of EverQuest, the lure of raids, highly challenging content aimed at those nearing the zenith of progression. Oh, this guy really, this guy wants to sound like an intellectual with a lot of this word choices. I like that. Mr. Stephen Wright is a five-head here, okay? Typically requiring a large number of teammates to complete, was one of the primary carrots that developers relied on to keep players spiraling up the seemingly endless stairs of fathomless dungeons and fetch quests. Now, after 20 years of tinkering, the concept of raid has come to encompass a wide variety of gameplay styles, and developers have relied on technology to ratchet up the spectacle, but the fundamentals remain largely the same. Raid-style content is one of the many different tools developers can utilize to conjure up an endgame. Jason Reynolds, senior designer at Guild Wars 2 studio ArenaNet, says, one of the innate features of raids is the fostering of socialization and camaraderie, which is doubly critical to the MMO genre. Being the first of your peers on a server of thousands of people to complete a particularly difficult encounter brings notoriety, proof of your skill with the game's most challenging concepts, and oftentimes the end result is solidified friendly bonds. That's what MMOs are about. You know what I like about this is that this is so true. It's a shame we don't see more of this in the actual design of Guild Wars 2. Am I right, boys? Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. That obviously that person's never fucked him in a raid with Teapot. I mean, I don't know, dude. I don't know. I don't really mind people fucking up. I don't really care. But there you go. It is a true story. It is a true story. It's a good job, Jason Reynolds. I think the irony is that in Guild Wars 2, this is probably like the case where it's the least, actually. Although, do you know? I don't even know, dude. Like, there are so many memes. Like, in WoW, everyone's at each other's throats for loot as well. Like, it's brutal, guys. It is brutal. People, the loot... The loot drama is intense, but I know that is social. That is a social experience. I'll give you that. But yeah, it's a very good point. Like raids are the ultimate, the peak of an MMO in a way, right? Like anything like that. If World versus World would be another really good example of something that is like really based on group interaction. I think World versus World actually goes even further than this. Actually, like, it really fosters socialization and team play, right? Like the groups that have kind of stuck together the longest are the raid teams and the World versus World teams, right? So that says something, right? That really does say something, guys, about MMOs in general and raids and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's big. It is big. So yeah, that's what MMOs are all about. Yeah, it is. I agree. Guild Wars 2 dev. While EverQuest was the first 3D game to incorporate raids, an idea conceived in the text-based multi-user dungeons in the early 90s, there's a little doubt that it was the breakthrough MMO World of Warcraft that first popularized the mode. In its 40-person incarnation, 40-person, according to the game director Hazakotas, WoW's early raids undoubtedly inspired by EverQuest, especially the profound sense of scale that 72 simultaneous players brought to the experience. Intended as the apex of achievement for enthusiasts, whole sub-communities began to sprout up around the raiding experience, with raiding guilds comprising some of the game's most passionate players. Yeah, I really... why do you think the guilds in WoW are called raiding guilds and do raids? I mean, I don't know, actually. Like, I've never really understood why people call it World versus World raids. It's a very unusual way of putting it, I think, actually. But, I mean, I guess it makes sense. It's pretty, it's high energy. Yeah. No, like WoW's raids are really epic, right? And this is completely right. Like he's completely right. It is insanely epic, right? Everything is massive. The bosses are usually massive. You've got 40 players spread out hurling frostbolts and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it's actually awesome. Yeah, it's really good. You do feel the scale. This is true in retail WoW as well. Like, everything is just huge. It's big. You know, I do enjoy it. I do enjoy the sense of scale you get. Something that you do find a little bit lacking in Guild Wars 2, actually, sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't really feel epic. Like, a lot of fights do. So, like, Zera, Keep Construct, and I think Gorseville is epic, actually. Gorseville is epic. Demos is epic in the last 10%. Like, Demos doesn't feel that epic until you get... Then it's epic at 10%. Doom is epic. Love it. Absolutely love it. I really like all of Wing 6. All of Wing 6 feels epic to me. It really does, actually. Like, I love CA. I love Lagos. And Kadim as well. I think Kadim is actually one of the fights where it doesn't feel quite as epic because everyone, you know, everything's kind of itty bitty, right? But still, yeah, like there's some really good stuff. But I think in some of the fights of like Veil Guardian and Sabbather, it doesn't feel quite as, you know, it doesn't feel epic. But then again, some of the bosses in WoW, like a lot of the Snake bosses, aren't that epic. So you know, I guess you got to build up to it, right? You can't have every single boss being insanely epic. That would be silly. That really would be ridiculous. You know, you got to build into it, and that's exactly what they did. Oh, a lot of this stuff. So yeah, I do love the scale though in Final Fantasy. Not in Final Fantasy, in WoW. I was reading a comment at the same time and said that. All right, let's continue. There was definitely a realization around that time that raids were a unique vehicle for the MMO genre. It's one of the most powerful social experiences you can have in online gaming. It's that sense of cooperation doing the same thing with a dozen or more people again and again that generally keeps people with the same group for years and years. Raiding guilds have been a mainstay of WoW and every other MMO out there for a long time. And the hours spent together in battle, arguing over strategy or whatever, those form real friendships. When you look at something like BlizzCon, you see people coming across the country to meet their guildmates in person for the first time, and that's a testament to the power of the raid format. Yeah, it is. It's crazy. There is this stereotype that gamers are kind of like no-life, antisocial shut-ins, but it's so wrong, especially if you think about the MMO genre in particular. Like, it's such a social experience, and when you take that away, like the game dies for you almost overnight. I think this is actually why a lot of people quit Guild Wars 2. I think in their heart of hearts, people would continue playing the game, but they're just, you know, there was just nobody to play with for a lot of people. Like, some of the really high-end players, like a lot of the players in SC, obviously just got bored because there's not enough to do in the game, if you're really into that. If you're a PvP player, then yeah, you know, you probably quit because the game doesn't get a lot of attention. But I think, you know, a lot of the people, PvE players who quit in Guild Wars 2, they quit because there's just no one... there's no one for them to play with. They've got no friends. Like, when you lose the social experience in an MMO, the MMO becomes a very bad single-player game, right? Because it's obviously going to be limited in its mechanics because it's not actually a single-player game, right? So yeah, it's incredibly powerful to have this in your MMO. You need it. You need that socialization. Like, why do you guys think that World vs. World has even survived? Like, World vs. World is probably in one of its most degenerate states ever, right? And it still survives because it's just very social. While the format has evolved over the years, there are several elements that make up the archetypal raid. While many players would point to large multi-phase boss fights as the backbone of MMO raid, Hazacostas takes a more measured stance. It's not so much you need to have a massive single target that shifts its attack patterns or throws waves of adds that use to chip away its HP bar. Rather, it's this format is one of the easiest ways to tick all the design boxes that a hungry player base expects. Yeah, no, I'm completely with him here. Like, it's in PvE content. Like, difficulty is like borderline immaterial, actually, or like how mechanically intense it is. It really is just the idea of getting together and doing it that's the core. Like, you can really see this in Classic. A lot of the gameplay in raids in Classic WoW is literally standing at range and using one ability and dodging like one mechanic. Like, don't go in the fire, or yeah, you're gonna get feared at some point. Yeah, you need to heal people. Like, these fights are still really enjoyable and a lot of fun to play, even though they're very, very simple. Of course, that's just, I think, for the general populace. There are some people who are really challenge hungry, right? And that's not enough. And I would kind of consider myself as one of those people to a certain extent. I'm pretty chill. I'm a pretty casual gamer, I suppose, when it really comes down to it. So I don't mind it, right? If it's not that difficult. I think it needs to be difficult. I can definitely see, for example, I can see myself getting very, very bored of Molten Core, right? Molten Core is starting to feel very, very easy to me, especially as I get more gear in the game, and I think that will, that's going to be very, very easy very soon, right? But yeah, no, it is all about just, having all the people together. More broadly, he says that a good WoW raid needs to hew closely to the holy trinity of MMO player roles: tanks who soak the boss damage, healers who erase it, and damagers who keep pace against the boss. While WoW's 12 classes each have their own subdomains, such as crowd control and area of effect damage, for the most part they fall into one of those roles, and challenging them equally is key to a good raid. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Having fights that are healing intensive, that are tank intensive, that are DPS intensive is really good, because it means that you're never going to get bored. And if each fight plays differently, even though you're effectively doing the same thing, it's good. Like, having some variety in the way the mechanics are is good. And to be honest, this is something that modern WoW does extremely well, I think. Like, if you look at how Mythic plays out, Mythic raids, every fight looks really fucking intense in its own specific way, and that's a really good thing. So yeah, like, I think WoW has a really good approach to raid design. I think there is no point in making a Holy Trinity game because WoW exists, pretty much, right? Well, I would actually extend that. WoW, because WoW and Final Fantasy, which are kind of equivalent there, because they exist, there is absolutely no point in making a Holy Trinity game anymore. Like, you need to do something else, because those two games have it done so well that there's no point. In fact, I think one of the reasons why Final Fantasy is able to thrive, because its raid design is so different to WoW, right? As it's been explained to me, Final Fantasy's raids are all about like a dance, right? Whereas I think WoW's raids are not really like that. Not all of them anyway. Like, WoW's raids are pretty reactive and seem to be very, very kind of like mobile and very fucking intense, right? Which is pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, there are obviously going to be similarities there. There's definitely going to be similarities. However, yeah, like, I think that the whole... this is where I would slightly disagree here. I don't think... Oh, he did a good WoW raid. Yeah, he's true with a good WoW raid, but I just think the Holy Trinity, it's less interesting than a hybrid system. For example, I don't think people appreciate how awesome, like, the Firebrand Renegade shit is going around now. That's so much fun to play, dude. Oh my god. Like, the fact that you can play with basically full hybrids now, and you see this in speedruns, is really exciting to me, actually. Whereas, like, everyone's responsible for kind of keeping themselves alive while doing damage and CCing and healing and buffing. That's really cool. I really like it. Yeah, I really like all the Firebrand Renegade stuff going on. That's very interesting gameplay, actually, in my opinion. Like, and it's such a shame that people don't appreciate it. Whenever they see like the SC Adina kill, right, they go, "Wow, that's so cool," right? But like, it's such good design, actually, from ArenaNet on like how the classes actually work. Oh my god, it's so good. It's so much better than the Trinity, man. It's so skill dependent. Like, a lot of the time, I've never been that impressed by records, because like, oh dude, these guys are really fucking good at doing their rotation. Wow, so good, right? But when I see like the hybrids, I'm like, dude, these guys are actually really fucking good. Of course, they were always good doing the records, right? But like, this to me is like super impressive because of like how well they execute the fights, and they're also performing every role at the same time, right? They're not just monkeying a rotation; they're also handling mechanics perfectly and supporting the group and doing damage. Like, that's such a so good. Like, yes, well done, so good, fucking good stuff. Yeah. Hybrid specs are really exciting. Hybrid specs are one of the things people miss more from vanilla. Yeah, I agree. Stuff like it's a shame that this is one of the things I actually was saying that if they do Classic Plus, which I really hope they do, like old school WoW, and they develop more content, I hope that they tweak the balance to promote hybridization a little bit. And they add gear that supports hybrids. For example, one of the second character I'm probably likely to play, and I'll level in WoW, is probably going to be an enhancement shaman, right? And it's not very good, but I just love the idea of it. Like, you know, you put these totems down and you buff your team, and you're doing damage as well, and you could potentially throw a heal out as well. Like, yeah, I really like the idea of that that spec. You know, it's cool. It's fun. You know. It's fun. And yeah, I enjoy that a lot. Hopefully that comes out. You know, they added like a gear set for it, right? They added a new gear set for that or something like that. Yeah. Hazakot says emphasizes that a consistent sense of challenge is absolutely essential to raid design, perhaps even more so than in traditional single-player games. In his experience, as the number of players in multiplayer PvE encounter increases, their willingness to tolerate difficulty spikes decreases. Yes, and there's a very good reason for this, and it's because if you add more points of failures, there's more chance that one person can fuck you up. I think this is one of the problems with certain fights in Vanilla WoW, actually, stuff like Cthulhu and Horseman. Like, in those fights, if anyone screws up, I think you can instantly wipe, right? So if you make it too difficult in a 40-man setting, it can be really punishing and really unfun. And I think WildStar had this issue as well. I think this was the problem. I think if Base is here, he could tell me about this. But apparently the 40-man raids in WildStar, they weren't like vanilla WoW raids, guys. They were actually hard, right? They were really hard. And that meant that they were a bit... it was a bit scary, because if anyone messed up, you would just get annihilated, right? And, yeah, if you have 40 people, 40 points of failure, that's obviously going to be a bit of a problem there as well. Like, a really, really big issue. Especially when the brunt of that difficulty falls in a particular class. That said, the WoW team specifically tries to tailor encounters to showcase the skills of particular groups, with the goal to throw the spotlight on each role in turn throughout. Yeah, I think this is good. Like, I think it's okay if sometimes there's like a really healing-intensive fight, or, a fight that the tank has to position the boss correctly. That it's all about moving the boss, like, so the AoE's all over the place. But as long as not every single fight is like that, I think it's fine. You know, each fight should be different in who's responsible for dealing with it. Because if you don't at some point really lean on the tanks or on the healers, you're limiting yourself mechanically, right? And I don't think WoW does that. Like, they do well there. Yeah, there you go. Pretty much the worst thing you can do in a raid situation is make it rote for one role and very complex for another, he said. It can be very frustrating if the challenge falls entirely on a tank's marshalling something that's very complex and intricate while everybody else has already mastered it. They're just getting mad at their friends. That sense of balance is absolutely necessary. Yeah, this is complete. Oh, this is so fucking true, actually. Holy shit. Like, there is nothing worse than playing, well, there's nothing worse than having mastered a fight on progression and then your team is still fucking it up, right? Well, this is annoying in Guild Wars too, because sometimes you can be doing something challenging and, you know, the monkey DPS just can't get the hang of the easy mechanics, right? Like, that, yeah, that can happen. That's really annoying. But it's really annoying if you're doing something really easy and you're effectively bored at this point, meanwhile someone else is doing something really hard. So it's like a double meme, right? Not only is say if the tanking is really hard, the tank is going to be getting frustrated because it's really hard for him to execute, and the DPS is going to be frustrated because they're bored, right? Because they've mastered the mechanic already, and now they're just forced to wait until the tank is good enough to beat it. Yeah, this is a huge key point, actually. Huge key point from WoW Man here. We're not going to be able to provide something unique for every one of those specializations in every encounter, but across an entire raid zone, we can. It's about having that moment where your talents are in the spotlight and you contribute to the group's success in a special way. But in the next boss fight, you take the back seat and someone else gets to shine. Yeah, absolutely. Like, because otherwise you'd end up with every fight being the same. And you know what? I'll tell you what. This is something that just watching WoW, it is very impressive. Every fight is different. And to be frank, Guild Wars 2, every fight is very, very different. There are some fights that are a bit meh, like stuff like Cairn, Cairn is such a weird boss. I'm not sure. I'd love to talk to the raid devs in Guild Wars 2 about Wing 4 development, because it just seems that Cairn was just such a weird fight. It's like Veil Guardian combined with knockback auto attacks and red circles. A really weird fight. Like, you know, but it does play very differently to everything else. Like, even though the mechanics are quite similar, like, it plays so differently. So I can't think of any fight in Guild Wars 2 where I think, dude, this is literally the same as the other thing, right? Yeah, they are pretty good. You know, well, I think they do a good job.
The mechanic of KC is the same thing as CA.
Yeah, well,
stone power against it.
Yeah. Kinda, but the way you do that is so different, though, right? It's very different.
Yeah, like, it's like, oh, we learned from KC, let's make CA.
Yeah, I mean, KC and I really like CA. Like CA is a good fight. I think. I don't know. I think KC is sufficiently different as well. Like the way he phases. He phases differently to how they're similar, but only because I think people would say they're similar because they look the same, right? They look similar, right? Because they're big golem. They're big golem boys.
Almost the same head.
Yeah, they're big golem boys. So I don't know. I don't think they're actually mechanically that similar though. So I think it's fine. Crystal Reed. Raids have evolved a lot over the last 2 decades, but there is a consistent formula. ArenaNet lead designer Crystal Reed says, at its core, if the content is challenging, requires group coordination, and rewards you for your skill, it can fall into the raid category of content. We've seen the size of raids drop quite a bit during that time, going from upwards of 100 players. My god, holy shit. Going down to as few as 6. What that looks like in every game might be a little different based on the game's needs. Yeah, and you know what? This might be a really hot take, guys. This actually might be a really hot take. I think that raids should be like 20 people. I think that 10 is too few. Right? 10 is too few. I want more people. I want fucking 20 people. 100 people in raids. Because I really do enjoy that epic feel and the hectic nature that raids can have when you've got 20 people. What worries me in Guild Wars 2, if you have 20 people, it will be so hard to fail with like everything without everything one-shotting you, because you can just if you go you can just like run double heal necro, like fucking double heal necro and start rezzing everyone. Like that is kind of a problem. But you'd have to design the fights around that and maybe and rebalance the game. Yeah, you'd have to rebalance the game, because otherwise I think 20 people would annihilate almost anything in Guild Wars 2. Like this is why open world is actually so difficult. It's so hard to deal with this in Guild Wars 2 for like open world and stuff, because like the more people you have, the more overpowered you get, right? Stuff in Guild Wars 2 scales very hard, right? It really scales up hard. So if you just start stacking loads of people, like everything gets easier, because like you just get broken OP, right? Because of the way stuff scales out. So yeah, you can just bring so much support and utility. You know what you'd have to do? You'd have to have very strict DPS checks. If you have 20 people in Guild Wars 2, you'd have to have very strict damage. While designers, hang on. What looks like in a game might be different on the games is, and yeah, what that looks like in every game might be a little different from the games. Correct. This is why 10-man is good for Guild Wars 2. Even though I'd kind of prefer it with a few more people, it's good because, dude, 10-man is already a bit of a push in Guild Wars for this kind of thing. So yeah, like you can get away with 40 in Classic WoW, because it kind of blew my mind actually when I started playing Classic. You can pug 40-man raids. And it's not hard. And that was crazy to me. That was insane. Because in Guild Wars 2, getting 10 is rough. Right? That's not easy. In WoW, people will stick around and wait for like an hour just to get a group and go and raid. It's intense. It's intense, dude. It really is. Right? Final Fantasy, a 56-man raid, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of lads. That is big, actually. Yeah, that is massive. But yeah, intense. Yeah, no, it does depend on the game's needs, and that's why I think 10-man is good for Guild Wars 2. But I also I like some of the flex modes. Like I'm not sure if regular WoW has this, but I know that I know that some private servers implemented this system, so you could go into a raid and it would kind of scale. It would scale down based on how many people you had. Like if you had 7 people, it would scale down from a 10-man, for example, right? That sort of thing. That could be kind of cool, I think. If you could make that a system, so you could go into a raid with 3 people, and it would scale down. Yeah, solo will scale down even more. Retail well has that.
Yes, healer and tank.
Yeah. While designers have to worry about wrangling that sense of challenge within a raid group, they also have to accommodate different degrees of player skill. Over the past decade, many MMOs have introduced difficulty settings for their raids, which allows the game to appeal to both the highly skilled guilds competing to become the first in the world to slay the Archfiend, and the more casual groups that Hazukosa calls the Friday night beer run crowd. I like that. Yeah, that's good. It's a problem that Final Fantasy director Naoki Yoshida, who has held his position since the game relaunch as the critically acclaimed Realm Reborn, knows quite well. His team has recently been working on a series of high-difficulty raids known as Ultimates. I do like the RP names of the fun. I like Savage.
The Ultimates are
right?
super hard.
I like that. I like Savage and Ultimates. That's high energy.
They
I
take
do like
80
that.
minutes or something.
Yeah, dude, that's intense. Which are intended to replace the existing Savage raids as the hardest content in the game. While he emphasizes that Ultimate raids are intended to stand apart from Final Fantasy's core progression, Yoshida says they're a response to the needs of the greater player base. Oh my god. Sounds like a good company, guys. Oh my god, I can't believe it. This is good. They're actually paying attention. The increase in player skill is astounding. And thus a dramatic gap has opened up. So when we make raids, we try to minimize that gap by tuning the job actions and the battle system overall. He says, I feel that what makes a raid good or bad is not the difficulty level, but whether the gimmicks and mechanics are convincing enough to the player. If the way they solve the raid is convincing and players can accept the logic behind it, then they will continue to try it, even if the difficulty level is high. Yeah, that's such a good point, actually. Oh, this guy knows what he's talking about. This is such a good point. Holy shit. The important thing about difficulty in a game is that it should never feel bullshit, right? It should never feel like the game is being unfair. And the core of what this guy is saying right here is that the game needs to feel fair. Like, you shouldn't get frustrated with the game because the game should not be screwing you over just for the sake of screwing you over, right? Like, this at Galaxy Brain right here, boys. And oh yeah, this is real good, guys. Responding to the player base. That's good. Looks like these Final Fantasy devs, they know what's going down, did you know? Oh yeah, they know what's going on. I like it. I like what these guys are selling here, right? They're big brains. And also, this is such a big deal. This is a massive fucking deal, guys. Okay, you have to adapt your raids to how the community. Yeah, this is such a big meme here, guys. Okay. People get better at games dramatically. If you compare how good people are at Guild Wars 2 now compared to how good they were when raids came out, it's actually yeah.
People didn't know if the cardinal directions. What the fuck?
It's so funny. It's insane. But yeah, no, it's true. It is true. Like, you want to. What the fuck is going on with my hair, man? Like, you want to adapt the difficulty of your game to the player base getting good at it, because otherwise people are going to get bored, right? It's kind of it's one of the downsides of Guild Wars 2's horizontal system, that a lot of the fights end up getting really, really easy because people are actually good at the game. For example, on launch, Gorseval was actually a fun challenge. Why was it a fun challenge? Because the DPS was actually relevant. Like, yeah, it didn't take people long to start doing no updraft. Okay, but dude, do you guys not remember like the first 10 no updraft Gorseval? It was close, right? You know, it wasn't easy.
Was it?
Yeah, it was, yeah, like he was doing World Eater and shit. You know, like the CC.
What is World
yeah,
Eater?
people were like fully delaying the CC. Right, like just to get no order. Right now, you insta break and he doesn't even do World Eater. Right, like it was a huge difference. Right, in the way people are. Like, this is a massive developer insight. Like, honestly, if you play Final Fantasy, guys, you're in seriously good hands. Like, this guy really understands the concept of raids and how they should work. Like, these two paragraphs is enough. Okay, it is enough to do this stuff. Like, it's those two paragraphs. I know that this guy's a Galaxy Brain. Well done, done, my friend.
Didn't even delay CC.
This is a good meme. And kind of designing raids based around the community, but the community as a whole, and difficulty settings are a really big deal. I think okay, here's my take. I've been thinking about this recently. I think in single player games. In single-player games, I almost feel like there shouldn't be I don't know, dude. Like, it's such a weird meme, actually. Like, I really like difficulty settings, but they have to be done well. I think difficulty settings are a really good idea. I think you should not put too many of them. I think having, like, story mode, normal mode, hard mode is good, right? Like, any more than that, I think it gets weird, right? However, I think in a single-player game, you can go crazy, right? Like, you can really... I think it's perfectly acceptable, if not even beneficial, to allow the player to scale their experience to what they want to do, actually. I think that's perfectly fine. In an MMO, you have to be a bit more careful, right? Like, you need to make sure that there's like a ramp of difficulty that people can climb up, and you don't end up isolating communities into one another, right? Like, you really don't want to kind of end up having these little tribes of players that never intersect, right? That's really, really dangerous, right? That's really, really dangerous. Like, difficulty needs to be implemented very well. You shouldn't just scale up the enemy's health, make it do more damage, that sort of stuff. I think if you want to have difficulty things, you should actually be adding mechanics, right? You should be implementing more mechanics into the game. Stuff like Doom CM is really good design, right? Like, adds a new mechanic that makes things completely different. Kadim CM, I think, is pretty good design. Not the best CM in the world, but I think it's good design. It adds another mechanic, right? That's a really, really good way of doing it.
That's
right?
it.
Yeah. But
You only have those two.
well, let's see. I think those are probably the best examples of it, but I think another great design is basically every CM in Wing 4. Like, Samrog CM is excellent design, Mercer Over CM is really good design, and Demos CM is really good design. Demos CM is a masterpiece of difficulties. Yeah, it actually is. It is. 100% it is. Okay? It's... Because it's... guys, I'm going to sound like a massive role player here, because Demos CM, it's perfectly fitting in on the roleplay, right? On normal mode, Saul helps you. On hard mode, it's so elegant. Yeah, that is the word for it, Jonah. It is such an elegant change. It really is. Because Saul just doesn't help you. He doesn't help you at all. Yeah. Do you know what the only gripe I have with Demos CM? Okay, is that I wish you phase at 10%, right? But you get a new phase, and he heals up to 25%. So instead of fighting Big Demos for 10%, which is kind of, it's over at that point, I think you should fight Big Demos for 10%. Saul still isn't helping you, right? But instead of teleporting to the demon world, Demos comes out of the demon world and kind of does like a Zera, and kind of, goes around the platform like this, that sort of thing. Instead of that, right? That would be so epic. And you fight him for 25% health. Now, I know that's crazy. That will be a lot of development time. But holy shit. This is something that... this is fucking God. Okay? An encounter that can be sold as not true difficult. I completely disagree with that. That's not true at all. I mean, if you really want to go there, I mean, technically yes, but the thing is, it's almost the only way you can make it unsellable is if you make the DPS check insanely strict. That would be the only way you could make it unsellable. Mechanically, it will always be sellable. You just have like a really strict DPS check, right? And then Saul starts fighting you, and Doom CM comes. Yeah, what I really love about some of the mythic fights in WoW is that a part of the reward for being good enough to do it is the fact that you then get access to this secret phase. Right? Okay? Oh my god. So good. Like, can you imagine the hype when people... They killed Mythic Gul'dan, right? And they were like, oh my... Yeah, it's over. And then another phase starts? Oh my god. So good. That's incredible. Like, when in Firelord... I think it was pretty heroic back in the day, right? With, I don't know, was it Firelands? Was it heroic or mythic? I don't know, right? But either way, you fight Ragnaros, then he gets up and you see Ragnaros with legs. I mean, come on, man, that's so cool. Now, I know Guild Wars 2 is Guild Wars 2, so maybe they don't have the dev resources to do that, but, that would be so good if, like, the CM was totally different. Like, they almost did this with Big Kadim. Like, when we saw Big Kadim on Kadim 2 CM, that was hype, dude. And it was not the most developed mechanic, but it was so cool, actually. It was amazing. I loved it. If it was more involved, like he would actually do stuff and you'd have to fight him, I think that would be more interesting, but it's difficult, right? That is difficult, right? So, yeah. I think we've kind of... I want to get through the articles. Like, there's actually quite a lot more to go, guys. Like, we're not done. Really? We're not done here. Oh. Yeah, we're like halfway, I think. No, I'm more like 2/3, but still, we got to get in the mix, guys, right? the secret extra boss in Throne of Thunder. Yeah, stuff like that is really cool. Like in the raid design, it's really exciting. Over time, as the technology powering these MMOs increased in raw horsepower, it's allowed for a greater deal of complexity and creativity in their raid encounters. So much so that Yoshida says he doesn't like to compare past raids to current ones, as he doesn't feel it's fair to the design team. I think that's very true. I think that you can see this even in Guild Wars 2. You can certainly see it in WoW. Like WoW raids have got ridiculous. They actually because of how insane WoW raids got, they had to like basically stop doing them like that because it just became completely impossible without add-ons, right? So they nerfed the add-on and then they could nerf the raids because it just got ridiculous. I think this was in like Draenor. I think in Warlords of Draenor, like some of the encounters in the final raid there were just like stupid, right? Like you'd have to have like 10 brains to be able to keep track of everything. So yeah, that was pretty intense. But it's true. It's you don't want to compare them. Like you know what though? I'm going to be a little bit cheeky, and I'm going to shill for Guild Wars 2 here. I think that raid quality, although they have got better at doing the raids, I think that Wing 1 and Wing 2 and Wing 3 actually hold up pretty well. Yeah, I think they holds up pretty well to the new raids. I think Veiled Guardian is still a very well-designed encounter. It doesn't really hold up to something like Kadim, I guess, but it's still well done. I think it's still well done. It's they're good encounters. That's good memes.
And it got tested actually by people, not by employees.
Yeah. To Hazakostas, the most dramatic changes have come in the boss arenas, which allow for a deeper level of environmental interaction. He cites the Siegecrafter Blackfuse fight in the Siege of Orgrimmar raid as a particularly salient example. Here, players storm a factory floor filled with conveyor belts that split out magic mechs, which mean the group has to splinter itself to deal with the separate threats. I think it would have been unthinkable to the original WoW team to make something that would actually work. He says, from that perspective, we've come a long way in 15 years. Oh yeah, like, this is very prevalent in something like World of Warcraft, because yeah, that game really has taken a while, right? Like it really has taken a while. The big brain. Still, possibly the most radical shift that's occurred in the raid space over the past years is that of the player count. For the most part, MMOs have jettisoned the 40-man mega groups of yore, instead focusing on groups that are as low as 6 in Destiny 2 or 8 in Final Fantasy in number. Even WoW has allowed some flexibility, scaling many of its newer raids for groups as small as 10. While you could argue this diminishes the epic scale that raids are known for the designers themselves view it as a move towards a more sustainable activity. In Guild Wars 2, for example, Reed notes that the addition of raids several years ago into the game's lifespan led to some difficulties. Uh-oh. The core players of the game had spent most of the time in 5-player environments through in-game content like dungeons and fractals. And we wanted to ensure the raid experience was uniquely different with the larger group size, she says. That definitely worked, but it came with the disadvantage that players suddenly needed to add 5 more players to their fractal group if they wanted to raid. It was an added challenge to players that for some created a barrier to entry. You know, like, everything is great in 5-man content. You know, I find 5 friends, but I can't find 5 more. I mean, yeah, I mean, 5 more people, boys. It's true, but I don't know. Like, is it really fucking 10 people in an MMORPG? Is that a barrier to entry?
Hardcore, yes.
I mean, I guess it is in Guild Wars 2. But yeah, there you go. I guess so. 5 more people, boys. You know, like no, people cannot seem to find 5 more people. 5 more people. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, I think it is. I think it does add to the gravitas of the mode, right? It does get epic. You know, it does bring some energy to the table, and I do really like that. Having 10 man raids. I think that what she's trying to get at here, almost, or rather, what this indicates that it is a really big problem in Guild Wars 2. I think people weren't used to it. I think people aren't really used to grouping up in general or having to play with other people. And that is an issue. That is 100% an issue. It's true. It really is. Yeah, it is big. It is big. So, yeah, it's a very fair point. And this is what I think was... Yeah, you've got... I think this is what Yoshiba was talking about earlier. Like in the article, he was saying that you have to tailor your encounters and your raids to your community, right? And that the amount of people you need is a big part of that, right? That's so... true. Yeah. I think raids are more about the feeling that this is a capstone content, and these are the most players you're ever going to see in game assembling for a real purpose, as Acosta says. It scales depending on what makes sense in your engine with your mechanics. It's a shooting game. 6 players can definitely feel like a raid. It just depends. Yeah, he's completely correct. I'm not sure if I entirely agree with that. I think that having a lot of people in the raid does just make it feel a bit more epic. I hate to say it, right? I do think if you got loads of people, it's going to feel like a more of an epic thing, because, you know, it's more people working together, I think, does inherently kind of ramp up the intensity of the encounter. I guess, as he says, it depends on the engine, right? Like, in Guild Wars 2, you're so used to seeing, like, 40 people running around zerging stuff down that when you have 10, it does feel like not that many, right? So, but I guess when you're in WoW, right? Like in WoW Classic, for example, like very often you're only playing with 5 people. And when you're questing, you're either solo or maybe 2 or 3 people. So scaling up to 40 feels insane, right? It feels absolutely crazy. Whereas in Guild Wars 2, it's kind of the opposite. Like, a lot of the open world stuff, you're always with, like, 40 people plus. When you scale it down to 10, it feels a bit less epic. And a lot of the open world bosses in Guild Wars 2 are huge as well. But yeah, this is something that I think... I don't know why Guild Wars 2 doesn't utilize this. Because I think there's so much potential for open world bosses feeling epic. So, like, Tequatl and Triple Trouble, they do feel really, really epic. But it just doesn't get capitalized on. Like, you know, I think ArenaNet needs to listen to the art. They need to read this article, guys. They need to read this goddamn article, right? They really do, okay? They actually do. Oh, well. There you go.
I think they will.
Yeah. While the continue... Well, we'll see with Drakkar, right? If that... Yeah. While the continued popularity of live games mean that this style of endgame content is likely to spread further across the culture, for many the MMO remains the home of the raid. And though these designers admit that the hours of crunching and grinding to reach the next goalpost after many, many team wipes aren't necessary for everyone, when it comes to the mindset of enthusiasts who continue to push the challenge even further, Yoshida puts it the best. That is like asking a mountaineer, why do you climb mountains? They take on the challenge because there is a raid they're waiting to be conquered. That is why I do it. Yeah, and this is something that we need to address in communities about the place, is that if you play a game, you're not compelled to beat everything in the game, right? Raiding isn't for everyone. In the same way that I would never complain, right? Okay, here's a good example, right? In the same way that some people could argue that they are locked out of raids, I would probably say that I'm locked out of certain things in Guild Wars 2 because I would find them incredibly unpleasant and intolerable to do, right? Like, a lot of the achievement hunting in short, there's a lot of skins. Like, yeah, there's a great example, like Vision. I consider myself basically locked out of stuff like Vision and Aurora because I would never put myself through that, right? I wouldn't be able to tolerate it, right? And that's okay. I don't mind that. I don't mind being locked out of Vision and Aurora. That's okay. I'm locked out of doing the Ring even because it's just too much AIDS. I wouldn't enjoy it. I wouldn't have fun doing it. And yeah, not everything is for everyone. Like, the MMO is a really big game. You know, there's something for everyone, right? If you don't like PvP, don't PvP. You don't have to PvE. You don't like World of Sword, don't World of Sword. You don't like raids, don't raid, right? But for some reason, people tend to feel entitled to everything in a game, and that's just wrong. That's not how it is. Like it's like an MMORPG, guys, is like a buffet. Right? You don't like coleslaw, you don't have the coleslaw, you know? You want to get some of that, you know, like fucking chicken on a stick, you go for the chicken on a stick, you know? You like the little pineapples with the cheese, you go for that, right? You like, you know, you go for the salad. No, I don't want the salad, dude. You know, you go and like eat the fucking like raw meat, you know, you go for that, right? That's what the game is like. But don't get mad for the buffet having coleslaw and you don't like it. If you don't like coleslaw, that doesn't mean you can complain that other people like it, right? That's ridiculous. A lot of people who don't like raids, like, oh, I can't do it, remove raids. It's, you know, they're like complaining that a restaurant serves something that they don't like, right? So, yeah, it's ridiculous. Ridiculous, guys. Insane. Yeah.